Welcome back. President Trump has taken aim at the banking industry for holding up the Clarity Act in the Senate. The president wrote on Truth Social this: banks need to make a good deal with the crypto industry and not hold the Clarity Act hostage, because that's what is in the best interest of the American people. I spoke with the CEO of Coinbase, Bryan Armstrong, about this main issue, which is, should platforms of crypto platforms be able to pay rewards to customers who move their money into crypto platforms and out of banks? Watch this.
This stablecoin reward issue is very important, and I think President Trump has showed incredible leadership here, creating a strong crypto agenda. We just got the Genius Act passed into law, which actually did enable stablecoin rewards to happen. The banks had their own concerns, and we reached a good outcome in the Genius Act. And now the banks really are coming and trying to undermine the president's crypto agenda. They're trying to protect their own profit margins, taking money out of the pockets of hardworking average Americans and putting it into the coffers of these big banks that are hitting record profits. And so our view is that there should be a level playing field where banks and crypto companies can lean into stablecoin legislation as an opportunity, and that includes paying rewards to Americans so that they can earn more money on their money.
Cheryl Casoni, we spoke with French Hill, who's working on this legislation in the House, and he said it was agreed upon. Both sides agreed that, in fact, the crypto players would not pay rewards on money that is on crypto platforms and taken out of banks. But now there's this idea that perhaps the crypto players are coming out with backdoor ideas. Like Bryan Armstrong said something about a membership program. Well, maybe we should, if you're part of the membership program, will be allowed to pay rewards. So, it's held up. And frankly, I think the crypto players and Coinbase in particular, it's in their best interest to keep holding this up, because they are paying rewards right now.
Yes.
Because of this loophole in the Genius Act.
They are. There's two sides to this, certainly. On the one side, you can say, why wouldn't crypto platforms be able to pay rewards? Because banks pay rewards in many other sides, whether it's credit cards, et cetera. But at the same time, the regulation has to happen. I mean, you've got to have regulatory clarity, because the banks themselves are the ones that are trying to move into investing in cryptocurrency, and of course, stablecoin being the backstop of all of that. At the same time, I think that Bryan Armstrong made a really good point about that he wants to have that level playing field. At the same time, this is such a new industry, and there's so many question marks. I think having lawmakers get their heads around exactly what it is the crucial piece of this. And I know you've got your interview. Yeah.
I think the CEO of blockchain.com just made a really important point, and he said, well, because I said then the crypto platforms should have insurance. They should have deposit insurance. And he said, well, not everything is FDIC insured, because it's only insured up to $250,000. And by the way, in terms of interest rates, they pay nothing on deposit accounts. I mean, it's so tiny. Let me bring in Wisconsin Congressman Bryan Steil. He is the chairman of the House Administration Committee and a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has warned that Coinbase must play by the same rules as a bank, or, quote, the public will pay. Your thoughts on all of this? Where are you on this rewards issue between crypto and banks?
The House passed stablecoin legislation, and we're working to get through market structure legislation in the crypto space. To move forward on market structure legislation, we find ourselves watching the Senate renegotiate stablecoin legislation. I think some ways people are overplaying their concerns in this space. This was negotiated when it passed the House and Senate and was signed into law by the president. The use case for stablecoins is yet to be fully seen, but it's very clear that there is a major opportunity here to dollarize the global south. That is absolutely essential for U.S. dollar dominance and to maintain world reserve currency status. And so making sure that we allow innovation and development in this space, but also getting through market structure where broader crypto firms can innovate and develop and invest in the United States of America is absolutely essential. We can't hold up clarity any longer.
That's absolutely right. We certainly are hoping that this gets out of this stranglehold. Let me get your take on digital assets and tokenization and financial services. Well, how do you see things changing?
I think we're seeing a major shift. I think with the new regulators at the SEC and CFTC, we're seeing forward-looking innovation at the opportunity here. As banks, as broader financial services firms tokenize, we're going to see more efficiencies in the financial services space writ large. That's really good for consumers. Being able to operate 24/7 with less friction in the system is, at the end of the day, saving money for consumers. And I think we're going to see massive transformation, innovation, and development in the financial services space in the coming years.
Yeah, really good points. Meanwhile, let's talk about this war. Israeli strikes overnight targeting the multi-million-dollar bunker used by Ayatollah Khomeini. Fox News confirmed that was the same place he was located when he was killed over the weekend. Operation Epic Fury now enters day 7 as the U.S. warns of intensified attacks to come. The House, of course, voted to block that war powers resolution, which the Democrats wanted to stop President Trump's military strikes without any congressional approval. The Senate, of course, shot down a similar measure earlier in the week. Congressman, where does this head next?
First, our thoughts and prayers are with the men and women in the United States military in harm's way and in the region carrying out these dangerous but heroic actions. The president's right. We cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon where they can threaten our allies in the region, but also threaten the United States of America. We can't allow them to have ballistic missiles that would deliver a nuclear weapon. And the president has the authority to take the actions that he has to remove that threat from the Iranian regime threatening the United States of America. There are those that want to cripple and clip the wings of President Trump in his actions to make sure that we're preventing Iran from being able to blackmail the United States of America and our allies. It's essential that we finish this action and remove the ability of Iran to have that weapon, to have those ballistic missiles, and in particular to also to have the Navy and the funding that they've conducted of terrorism across the globe.
Yeah, and we're going to talk with Ambassador Danny Danon in a moment. But let me switch gears real quick and get your thoughts on where we stand on this insider trading potential legislation. House Republicans increasingly frustrated with leadership for not moving fast enough on a congressional stock trading ban. Democrats are introducing a new bill called the No Getting Rich in Congress Act. The bill prohibits the buying and selling of stocks, futures, commodities, and cryptocurrencies with, quote, strict reporting and enforcement mechanisms. Mr. Chairman, you're the first one to come on this program and talk about this issue. You have talked very much about the fact that there should not be trading of individual stocks because you have access to too much information in Congress to be able to trade freely like that. What's the latest here?
I firmly believe members of Congress should not be trading individual stocks. The risk of the appearance of impropriety or impropriety itself is far too high. That's why I introduced the Stop Insider Trading Act to prevent members of Congress from being able to buy stock and being able to even profit off of any insider information they may gain while serving in Congress. I was excited when the President of the United States at the State of the Union called out my legislation and asked Congress to move forward to pass the Stop Insider Trading Act. I've been continuing my conversations with my colleagues in the House and the Senate. I do believe that we're going to have a vote up or down in the near future on that legislation in the House, and then I expect the Senate to follow course and have this signed into law by President Trump in the coming weeks.
All right, we'll be watching that. Great work on that, Congressman. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Congressman Bryan Steil. We'll be right back. Stay with us.